In most parts of Washington, D.C., there's not a lot of greenery, but in a quiet little apartment nestled in the heart of the city, I created a lush jungle paradise enclosed in a simple IKEA display cabinet for one of my favorite tiny friends. Meet Blaze. At nearly 2 years old, she's a gargoyle gecko who earned her name from my nephew because of her stunning red coloration. She's not just beautiful, she's a survivor. Blaze came to me about a year ago, gifted by a breeder who saw her challenges with metabolic bone disease, a condition stemming from her incubation period. Metabolic bone disease in reptiles is caused by calcium imbalances, leading to weakened, deformed, or brittle bones. She wasn't fit for sale, but she still deserved a home. Join me as we create a new world for Blaze, a world that's not just an upgrade, but one where she can truly live her best captive life. Don't worry, that's just her temporary tank for now. Before we dive into the new build, let's take a look back at my previous IKEA DTOF conversion. When I first put it together, it had so much potential, an ideal habitat, but over time, things started to go downhill. Most of the plants didn't make it, leaving the enclosure looking sparse. Hard water stains crept onto the glass, and worst of all, water had seeped into the MDF baseboards, causing them to swell. At this point, I was already considering a change, but then I saw something that forced my hand. Ants! That's when I knew I had to act. I got it out of there immediately. Luckily, I scored this IKEA Rudsta cabinet on Facebook Marketplace for just $40, and it was only 3 blocks away. Measuring in at just under 32 inches wide, 42 inches tall, and 15 inches deep, it's the perfect size for this spot on my wall, and more than adequate for Blaze. I used the 2 glass shelves that came with it and some extra glass to create a watertight base, essentially turning the bottom into an aquarium. I siliconed all the edges together and let it cure for 24 hours before conducting a water test. And disaster. A major leak showed up immediately. Nothing short of frustrated, I stripped everything apart, resealed it, and made sure to pack those tricky corners with extra silicone. I tested again. This time, after 48 hours, no leaks. With everything holding steady, I was finally ready to move forward. A drainage layer is crucial in a vivarium because it prevents excess water from saturating the substrate, which can lead to root rot in plants and create unhealthy anaerobic conditions. By separating the water from the substrate, it maintains proper humidity levels and ensures a stable, healthy environment for both plants and animals. For this build, I created a false bottom using egg crate and zip ties, essentially building a stage that keeps the substrate above the glass. This allows water to pool beneath the substrate in the aquarium portion at the bottom of the vivarium. Next, I notched a piece of PVC pipe and siliconed it to the bottom glass with the notch side down. This will provide future access to the drainage layer if needed. Using more zip ties, I secured window screen to the outside of the false bottom and placed it back inside. Pea gravel was poured around the edges of the false bottom until everything was level. Then I added 2 layers of window screen on top, ensuring full coverage from wall to wall and cutting a hole for the drainage pipe. A PVC cap was added to prevent substrate from falling through the pipe, which could create a blockage. Now the substrate can rest on top while water drains freely below. For substrate, I'm using NE Herp's ABG mix, which contains orchid bark, sphagnum moss, charcoal, peat moss, and tree fern fiber. A perfect mix for both drainage and moisture retention. It was carefully poured in and sloped towards the back to give the vivarium some added visual depth. To build the foundation of the background, insulation panels were cut to size and siliconed together. Before moving forward, I did a test fitting. The fit was snug, as planned, but the shelf mounts on the inside of the cabinet were problematic. To work around them, notches were cut into the back of the panels and earth magnets were siliconed to the back to help secure the background in place. With the foundation set, I began arranging the hardscape and planning the placement of the grow pots, ensuring that nothing extended more than 12 inches deep so the cabinet doors could close properly. To improve adhesion, the insulation was roughed up with a blade before applying expanding foam. The foam not only locked everything into place, but also added variety and dimension to the background. After the foam cured, it was carved down with a blade to create a more natural texture. This step also prepares the surface for the next phase, applying silicone. The carving process, though time-consuming, is essential for achieving a realistic look and proper adhesion, as silicone will not stick to the foam if it's still shiny. Once the expanding foam sections were shaped, I moved on to the insulation board areas, refining the details and even incorporating a small hidden food bowl holder. By the end of this stage, the background was taking shape. Of course, carving created a huge mess on the floor. Silicone was carefully spread across the entire background, worked thoroughly into every surface to ensure full coverage. While still tacky, a textured blend of repti-chip, sphagnum moss, and tree fern fiber was applied and pressed firmly into place. Patience was key, as some sections required multiple layers to achieve complete coverage. Once cured, the excess material was shaken away, revealing a naturally textured background ready to be fitted back into the cabinet. The hardscape was complete. Even though small patches of purple insulation remained visible, they would soon disappear beneath the plants. The cabinet lid was replaced to ensure everything aligned perfectly. To provide additional stability, L brackets were siliconed to magnets and positioned on the interior of the lid, adding a resistive force to keep the background from falling forward. Drainage holes were punctured into the grow pot bases, ensuring proper water flow for the plants above. Finally, I added a small piece of wood connecting the substrate to the main structure, an extra measure to help Blaze climb back up if she ever falls. The surviving plants from the previous enclosure were carefully salvaged and given a new home in the updated setup. Among them, the standout was an Alocasia clarinervium. Its striking leaves matched only by its wildly healthy root system. Alongside it came an anthurium and a trailing ivy. With the old plant settled, it was time to introduce some new life. The delicate, feathery texture of an asparagus fern brought an element of softness, while a selection of vibrant alocasias added bold and interesting foliage. For a touch of elevation, a rabbit's foot fern was planted up top in sphagnum moss, taking advantage of its epiphytic nature. Once the planting was complete, everything was thoroughly watered, bringing the vivarium to life. I added a generous layer of leaf litter and sphagnum moss to cover the substrate. This not only creates a safe space for the inhabitants, but also provides essential food for the cleanup crew. First up, we add our isopods. Isopods play a crucial role in a bioactive vivarium by breaking down decaying organic matter, such as dead plant material and waste. They help maintain a healthy, balanced ecosystem by recycling nutrients back into the substrate. Next, we add springtails. These tiny, soil-dwelling creatures are excellent at controlling mold and fungus in the vivarium. They feed on mold and decaying organic matter, keeping the environment clean and free from harmful buildup. Together, isopods and springtails work harmoniously to create a thriving, practically self-sustaining habitat. The Rudsta cabinet's built-in wire hose provided a perfect pathway for the misting system. A screwdriver was used to carefully puncture the insulation background, allowing the misting tube to thread seamlessly through the opening. The tubing was then connected to a misting nozzle, which had been siliconed to a magnet. This setup allowed the nozzle to attach securely to the lid while remaining adjustable for positioning. With the misting system in place, the water reservoir was filled, and a test run brought the setup to life. The gentle mist swept through the enclosure, leaving it glistening and alive like a true rainforest. A couple of weeks in, the plants were still adapting to their new environment, and the adjustment period was proving challenging. There was noticeable die-off, but overall the vivarium was holding its own. Despite this, the smaller, temporary enclosure wasn't ideal for Blaze, so I decided to introduce her to her new home. At first, she was understandably cautious. By morning, though, she had found her way to the highest point of the tank, the misting system's tube, a vantage point fitting for her inquisitive nature. Over the next few days, her confidence grew and she began to explore every corner of her new habitat, quickly making it her own. Over time, the rabbit's foot fern struggled and eventually withered away, so it was removed, revealing a very happy Blaze beneath the foliage. In its place, a pitcher plant was introduced. This is a carnivorous species with tubular leaves designed to trap and digest insects. However, despite its promise, the pitcher plant didn't last long, dying in just a few days. On a brighter note, the enclosure has seen a surge of fresh growth. New leaves are sprouting, and the anthurium has even begun to flower. To add even more vibrancy, an alocasia red secret was introduced, bringing its bold, striking color and texture to the mix. With a string of bad luck in this area, I made one final attempt to fill the canopy with bromeliads, which add a lush, jungle feel to the vivarium. These vibrant plants can be easily pinned directly into the background for a natural look. Additionally, a terrestrial bromeliad was planted in the substrate to further enhance the layers of the habitat. Since inception, natural sunlight has proven to do the cabinet justice, but I knew different lighting could take it to another level. I ordered some magnetic T5 lights from Amazon. Effortlessly snapping them into place and connecting the series power cables. However, to run the main power cord to the outlet, I had to remove the lid, which caused the entire background to fall. To stabilize it, I wedged a branch in the front of the background. After loosening the screws holding the top rail, I lifted it, threaded the power cord through, and replaced the lid. From there, it was a simple matter of connecting the cable to the first light and reconnecting the misting system tubing. To keep things tidy, the wires were taped to the lid, and with everything secured, I removed the branch and slid the cabinet back into place. For a final touch, I added a few plants and a glass head as an accent piece on top. Once everything was set, I gave the plants a thorough watering, followed by a big mist to bring the humidity levels back up. Throughout all the chaos, Blaze remained unbothered, just chilling in her new home. The lights wouldn't truly be appreciated until nightfall, and when they were, wow. The entire vibe of the vivarium was transformed. The plants appeared more vibrant, their colors and textures enhanced by the interplay of shadows from the overhead lighting. This honestly turned out much better than I'd expected, and it's a perfect addition to my space. I know this was a lot, so feel free to ask any questions about the process. See you next time.